The book of Proverbs and chapter 27. Proverbs 27. We were looking at verse 17 in our last study. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And we saw that is how God intends our relationship to be with one another. We can have strong convictions established in the Lord. We're not weak like clay. We're like iron. And yet when we come together, it's not God's intention that we destroy one another. You can take one piece of iron and hammer another piece of iron with it and destroy. Each can destroy the other. And that's what happens in fellowship between a lot of brothers. And then you have the other alternative where one man's like iron and another man's like clay, and then they stay together and they call that fellowship. But it's not fellowship, it's just one iron putting its stamp on the clay. No, God's intention is that we can be like iron, both of us, and yet that we don't destroy each other, but sharpen one another. And that's a wonderful thing when we can have a relationship like that, where, as we read here in verse 17 in the Living Bible, a friendly discussion is as stimulating as the sparks that fly when iron strikes iron. When iron strikes iron, there are sparks, but that results in a sharpening. And it's a wonderful thing when we can be strong and yet fervently in love with one another, even if we don't see eye to eye on a whole lot of minor issues. Our love is not tested when we agree with one another, but when there are certain things we have slightly different opinions on, then we can know whether we love one another or not. Verse 18, he who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. There are two things there. First of all, like it says in the New Testament in 2 Timothy 2:6, the hard-working farmer will be the first to receive his share of the crops. So, that's only righteous of God, that those who have worked hard on their life will naturally be the first to receive. They will be the first fruits. And he who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit. He who watches his inner life will reap the benefit of having an inner life from which rivers of living water can flow. Of course, he who neglects that inner life, cares only for the external, will not be able to eat that fruit, because he also will reap what he sows. And he who cares for his master will be honored. Now what that means is that we have to seek God's honor and not our own. We care for our master means that we're not concerned about our own name, but about the Lord's. He who cares for his master will be honored. There again, God sees the inner attitude of a man. Verse 19. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. And that verse teaches us that just like in water we can see our own face reflected, so very often when we try to judge what is in another person's heart, we all have the tendency to have opinions as to what another person is thinking, or why a certain person did this, or why a certain person did that. And we have a certain opinion. And it says here that what we see in the other person's heart is actually only a reflection of what is in our own. That's a very searching verse if you think about it. It means that when you think that other person is selfish in what he did, it's because you yourself are so selfish that you think that everybody else must be having some wretched selfish motive like yourself. That's it. Or when you feel that that person said that to hurt you, that's a reflection of the fact that in your own heart, you always have this wretched attitude of wanting to hurt other people. So you imagine that his heart is also like your filthy heart. But it may not be. It may be good. But we have that tendency to always imagine that other people have the same rotten motives that we ourselves have. Just remember that the next time you think that some other brother or sister has got a rotten motive, say you're actually looking at a mirror. You can't imagine that anybody can be purer than you are yourself. And since your motives are so rotten, you think other people are like that too. As in water, face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. That's a very good way that when we tend to judge another, I get light on the condition of my own heart. And if I can only humble myself there and say, Lord, what I'm seeing is not his heart, because I can't see it in any case, but I imagine that he's got these things in his heart because that's the condition of my own heart. Yeah, then I can cleanse myself and purify myself. Verse 20, Sheol, that is the place of the dead, and Abaddon, that is the place of judgment and hell, are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. Now that's speaking about covetousness. When the New Testament speaks in 1 John chapter 2 about the lust of the eyes, that's different from the lust of the flesh. Fornication is a lust of the flesh. The lust of the eyes is to lust after material things, which we see with our eyes and we want. That is the particular meaning of the lust of the eyes, or as the Living Bible puts it, the desire to buy and possess everything that my eyes see. And that's what it says here. The eyes of a man are never satisfied. He sees this and he wants that. He sees that and he wants that. Sees the other thing and he wants the other thing. Just like it says, death and hell are always waiting for more and more people to come into it. Hell's always waiting for more people to come in. And every day it's receiving people by the thousands. And the same way, the eyes of man is equated, covetousness there is equated with the desire that there is in hell to always have more people in there. So you see what a horrible thing covetousness is. Like someone has said, God has made enough in the world for the need of every single human being, but not enough for the greed of even one man. Because the more we get, the more we feel we should have. I mean, we can examine ourselves and see how some years ago we would have been quite satisfied with what we have today. But you may find that we're not satisfied with what we have today because now we're longing for something more. There is a continuous dissatisfaction in the life of the covetous person. Verse 21, the crucible is for silver and the furnace for gold. And a man is tested by the praise accorded to him. And that says that just like we put gold into the fire and silver also to test it, to see whether it's real gold or silver, you can see the genuineness of a true man of God. At least we can know it ourselves, even if other people can't know it, by my reaction when people praise me. Of course, it's also true that when people criticize me, my reaction is a test of my spirituality. But I can pass that test, that I have now died to the opinions of people to such an extent that even if I hear that someone has said something bad or criticized, it doesn't disturb me. Good. But here is a higher test than even criticism and opposition, and that is praise. It's easier to face criticism than it is to face praise. That when somebody says something good about us, and still there is no flicker in our heart of a little satisfaction and a little happiness that so-and-so brother or sister has such a good opinion about me, then I have overcome in that area. If there is a flicker there, when I heard something said good about me, maybe I heard that someone said something good about me behind my back, and there's something flickers inside of a little happiness and joy, then I know there's a little dross still in the furnace to be melted away. And it's good for us when we get that to judge ourselves and cleanse ourselves from that little dross that is there, which made me a little happy. We are to come to the place where we so die with Christ that criticism does not produce any flicker in our hearts, and praise does not produce any flicker in our hearts either. We have really then lived before the face of God. Only such people are really living in the most holy place before God's face continuously. See, most of us, we live there now and then and come back into the place where we want the praise of men. And so this is a tremendous verse that tells us a man is tested. The real value of a man is seen by his own reaction to praise. And that is something which another person cannot know. Because, you don't know what I feel in my heart when somebody praises me. And I don't know what you feel in your heart when somebody praises you. So this is not a verse for us to judge one another in, because we don't know. But it's a wonderful verse for each of us who are, if you are wholehearted, to judge yourself by. And say, Lord, here's a verse by which I can find out whether I'm really wholehearted in judging and cleansing myself. Verse 22, though you pound a fool in a mortar with a pestle, along with crushed grain, yet his folly will not depart from him. You know, a mortar and a pestle is that solid iron piece which you put inside an iron vessel to crush various bits of grain and powdered chilies and things like that. He says, even if you put a fool inside there and crush him down, his folly still doesn't depart from him. But compare this verse with chapter 22 and verse 15. In chapter 22, verse 15, it tells us about when this fool was a little child. When this fool, whose folly does not depart from him now, even when he's put inside the mortar and hammered with a pestle, pounded in a mortar with a pestle. When he was a child, if his father had been a little wise and used the rod a little more on him, then it says here that folly would have departed from him. And that's where we see that when young people grow up to do a whole lot of stupid, foolish things, again and again and again and again and again, we have to say we feel sorry for those young people, because the folly is with the parents. The folly is with the parents who never drove out that folly from this fool when he was a little child. Now it's too late. The fool's grown up. And now, no matter what you say, you can hammer him with the word in the meeting, they'll still go and do the same stupid, foolish thing. You can pound him with a pestle and mortar, and they still go and do the same stupid, foolish thing, because it's a bit too late. Now, praise God that if we are wholehearted, we can humble ourselves and really ask God to discipline us and do for us what our parents failed to do when we were young. And if you're wholehearted, there's hope for us there. Because God's now become our Father and He'll take care of our discipline. If we are really wholehearted and come to Him and say, Lord, my parents didn't discipline me when I was small. They petted me and they loved me and they cared for me. I grew up to be an absolute fool. Now, Lord, you take me in your hand and discipline me so that I will not continue to be a fool in the coming years. Then there's hope for us. And that's a warning for all parents to really don't give your child a heritage of growing up to be a fool, that one day this verse has to be said about him. It's too late, even if you put him inside a mortar and with a pestle the foolishness will not depart. Let's take that seriously as parents so that we drive it out of our children when they are young, so that we don't give them an inheritance. I mean, parents are so concerned that they don't give their children an education. Think of a parent who's concerned, oh, I can't get my child into the best school for admission, and they're so bothered about that. But here is the thing which they don't seem to be so concerned about. And that's why we must take it more seriously, that we teach them wisdom when they are young.